Hey folks, this is my friend Mike. He's a community organizer and voting rights activist who I always have really great conversations with on tough things like racism in Minnesota and what we can do to end white supremacy. And take it away, Mike.
I'm so glad that we're doing this, Sven. All eyes are on Minneapolis. As folks know, we have been having a tough and difficult conversation about race in the city. I'm thankful that you've been leaning in with having these conversations with me since that officer kneeled on George Floyd back and murdered him. The trial of the police officer that killed him and the three officers that stood by and watched are actually starting up now. First trial is going to be starting up this week. So we brought on Mayor Frey. Jacob Frey came and joined us, and we had a great conversation with him about the upcoming trial, some of the structures and the future of his vision about Minneapolis. So I'm gonna be protesting, Mr. Mayor. I'm gonna be out there in the streets, and I wanna be safe. I think as an organizer, I wanna be able to wake up on Tuesday and still be able to organize some more. So what are the safety precautions that the city's taking? I know there's going to be some streets closing. What's happening in the city over the next week?
Yeah. Mike, you have been someone who has peacefully protested, who's been an activist now for, over a decade. And, you do it with style, and you get your message out in a beautifully peaceful way. And, that's what we're pushing for. I strongly believe in First Amendment rights. I believe in that people should have the ability to peacefully protest, especially given the magnitude of this moment. I think that it's a critical part of the healing process. I think that it's a critical part of our democratic process. And so not only will we be allowing for peaceful protest, but we want to make sure that those who are marching and making their voices heard are protected and are safe. And so we certainly will be allowing that, every step of the way. There are a couple of basic street closures as of right now, but obviously that changes through time. The street will be closed on 6th Street from 3rd to 4th Avenue. So that's basically the location under the Hennepin County Government Center. As of right now, look, the city's open, downtown is open. We encourage people to just go about their day as normal and patron their local businesses. These businesses have been hurting through COVID, and we want to make sure they've got the customer base that's coming in to support them.
And yes, spring is around the corner here, actually.
It is. I also wanted to note, we aren't designating locations where people can protest. That was a discussion briefly. But that kind of ruins the whole point of a peaceful protest. You don't want to sit in an enclosed area where government has identified to protest. That sort of ruins the whole point. We want to allow for peaceful protest. We want to keep people safe. But, as is always the case, your First Amendment rights, they stop at the next person's nose. And so we will not be tolerating any violence. We will not be tolerating any looting. And by the way, we want to be working directly with those who are peacefully protesting to identify those outside agitators that are going to come in. Because this is what we saw in late May and early June of last year. We saw these outside white supremacist agitators come into our city using our peaceful protesters as cover to cause chaos and destruction. We cannot allow that. We will not allow that. The message to them is, if you're going to go down that road, you're going to be arrested.
I think there was a lot of anger on my side, a lot of anger, rightfully so. But there were folks who were not a part of Black Lives Matter, carrying sawed-off hammers and like mallets full of bricks, right? That you weren't there to peacefully protest if you're coming with a mallet full of bricks. And so I saw you last week where they talked about protecting Cub Foods in North Minneapolis on Broadway. Can we talk about like the practicality of what we're doing to not only to keep me safe while protesting, to keep my grocery store open and to keep Target open? What are we doing to actually work with the community?
Absolutely. What we are doing right now is setting up these two-way lines of communication so that our city can quickly disseminate information to community leaders, to neighborhood associations, block captains, cultural groups, nonprofits, you name it. And we're formalizing these agreements ahead of time. So it's not as if we didn't have these agreements and relationships set up back in late May and early June, but what time has allowed us is the ability to formalize these agreements, get almost a phone tree set up so that if there is something going down on the ground, we can quickly have that intelligence stream right up to those that are making decisions, and vice versa. We can help disseminate the correct information. We found, like in late May and early June, that there was a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of that, it was spread intentionally. So we got to be doing our part on our side to get the right information out to communities so that they're better equipped to handle these difficult situations that may rise up. And we, of course, will also be working with our law enforcement partners. Is that the whole equation? No, it is not, but it certainly is part of it.
That's what I was going to ask too. Do you feel better prepared than events from months ago? I mean, obviously that was almost impossible to prepare for. It seems like there's a lot more coordination. I'm sure you're talking to the governor and everybody to really be kind of ready for anything.
Sven, that's exactly right. The asset we have this go around that we certainly did not last is time. We've been preparing since literally late August, working with a number of different jurisdictions, with community partners, with the state of Minnesota, and that culminated, yes, with a request for the National Guard come December. And so we will have people prepared, and everybody is united and galvanized around a few key priorities. The first is public safety, and specifically prevention. We need people to feel safe. We need our communities to feel safe. We will not be tolerating any form of lawlessness or looting or any of that. If that goes down, you will be arrested. Second is peaceful protest and allowing for expression of First Amendment rights. And we feel strongly, again, that is a very critical part of the healing process, given that our communities have faced just a barrage of trauma over this last year, and it will culminate in this trial and, of course, the verdict. And the final thing is just kind of keeping the city running and keeping these core city services delivered with excellence. And so those are really the priorities. And yes, this go around, we've had time to prepare, and we are.
Can we talk about what initiatives your administration have taken to make my life and other Black folks' lives more safe in the city? What can we look at to make sure that, I'm not the next person that's killed by the Minneapolis Police Department?
We have instituted a litany of changes in the way that the police department does business. And I'm going to go through them one by one, not getting to every single, because there's a number. First, we had a full overhaul of our use of force policies to make it as stringent as possible under state law. Second, we wanted de-escalation embedded in everything that our police officers do. It shouldn't be an afterthought. This should be literally the first resort when officers encounter a problematic situation. And then following that incident, they should be reporting. Here's what happened. Here's specifically what I did to de-escalate the situation. If I wasn't able to de-escalate it and I had to use force, here's why. And so it's all there, it's embedded, and we're able to track. We're able to improve officers' conduct, and if necessary, we're also able to discipline them. We've gotten rid of no-knock warrants. We've seen, whether it's Breonna Taylor or otherwise, we've seen a number of—
We killed Breonna Taylor, yeah.
That's right. We've seen a number of people from our Black communities nationwide get subjected to some form of no-knock warrants. And other than really exigent circumstances like a kidnapping or a hostage situation, there will not be no-knock warrants. They have to announce. So we've set up plans as well to make sure that we're tracking the activity of our officers through an attorney that is literally embedded within our Minneapolis Police Department. And they can help to kind of bird dog some of these situations to make sure that complaints aren't lingering on somebody's desk and they're working its way through the process quickly. Now, there's a bunch more that I haven't even mentioned. But here's the thing. Will any one or even all of these policy changes shift the culture of the police department? No. The answer is no.
Right.
And I got to be honest about that, because culture at the end of the day, it is about people. It's about personnel. It's getting the right officers in. It's getting the wrong officers out. And I got to make this pitch here, because there is a state law right now that in so many cases prevents Chief Arredondo and myself from getting those wrong officers out, and it's this mandatory arbitration. 50% of the time when the chief or I fire or discipline an officer, that decision gets overturned through arbitration, and that individual gets sent right back to the department from which they came to continue to ruin trust with community. There is nothing more debilitating than terminating somebody who has done wrong. And I can give you some egregious examples where we have fired someone. You've probably heard of a few of them, and they've come right back to the department. That's unacceptable. Give Chief Arredondo the ability to get the wrong people out. Give Chief Arredondo the ability to get the right people in. I trust him. He will.
There was that racist Christmas tree. Folks haven't known about
Perfect
that
example.
one. There was an unfortunate Christmas tree that was put up in what was at the 4th precinct. You tried to fire him, but the union contract gave these guys their jobs. And that's horrible. We're going to be showing this on the internet, and I know a lot of folks from all over Minnesota is going to be watching. So this is no disrespect to the great folks out in Edina and Farmington and Minnetonka, but I think that there is something about folks who live in the community stepping up to protect the community, and for us to be unapologetic about getting folks that look like me who live here into the role of working for the city. Are there any efforts trying to get Minneapolis police officers to live in Minneapolis?
Yes, we literally just passed a new plan to bring more officers from Minneapolis into the department. And it basically ups the criteria, and it places a new valuation on a number of different aspects associated with either living or just being involved socially in some form in Minneapolis. So let me explain. So first off, right now, about 92% of our officers live outside the city. And
92.
So to do the math, only about 8% of our officers live within the city.
9 out of 10. I didn't know it was that high. I thought it was in the 70s. 92. That's 9
It's
out of
very
10.
high.
Other larger cities, is that a similar percentage? Do we know?
You know, I think Minneapolis is probably particularly high, just given that its geographic area is smaller. You know, it could be a number of different factors, but I think that is a high figure of officers living outside the city. Now, does that mean that all the officers that live outside the city are bad officers? No, there are a lot of good officers there. But I, like you, Mike, have an inherent belief that you are more connected to a community in which you live. You've built out more relationships with a community in which you live. And so we've placed a higher kind of valuation on officers, on recruiting officers and getting in officers that live in Minneapolis. We've placed a higher valuation to get in officers that have some form of social service background. We've placed a higher valuation on officers that have experience volunteering at a homeless shelter in Minneapolis, or a food shelf in Minneapolis, or go to church or synagogue or mosque in Minneapolis, because we know that you've built out these positive relationships that, by the way, can help you be a better officer in that particular area in which you're familiar. And so that valuation, that's just part of it. The other part of it is we actually need people from Minneapolis and that have these connections to Minneapolis to apply.
Right.
And so, you know, I've heard a lot of talking about, about the deep-seated and structural change that we need within the police department, and that is right. We are for it. That culture shift needs to happen. And so if you're a young person or middle-aged person for that matter, that wants to change the way policing is done, that believes strongly in their neighborhood and you want to protect it, you can apply to the Minneapolis Police Department and be part of the change that you want to see. We're hiring. We would love to see young people from every single race out there applying to our police department to be part of that change.
You're on the record as saying that you don't want to abolish the Minneapolis Police Department, that there's going to be police in Minneapolis. What could be upcoming that is happening on the ballot, or is it have to go through the Charter Commission? Is it really happening? I actually don't know, and I'm an organizer. So could you help break this down?
I can. This might take a little while, but I'll give you a rundown here. So the council has a proposal that is moving forward that is looking for a charter amendment. The community, people, organizers, activists simultaneously have a proposal that is moving forward. There are parts of these proposals that I support, and there's one key part that I do not. So first off, let me be exceedingly clear. I am a huge proponent of safety beyond policing. I think we need to see it. I think there are so many calls that happen in the city of Minneapolis that do not require an officer with a gun to attend to the incident. And this could be a social worker, this could be a mental health responder, what have you. Everybody is for that. There's really no divergence of opinion on that front. Here's where I disagree. This proposal, in addition to including these other safety beyond policing elements that we're all for, it would have the head of public safety, or Chief Arredondo, report to 14 different people, 13 council members and the mayor. I disagree that that is a good mechanism to ensure accountability. In fact, I think it would be exactly opposite. Right now, when things go wrong, for better or for worse, it's very clear who to blame. You can blame the chief of police, Chief Arredondo. You can blame me. That's right. And believe me, people do. Right? And I think that accountability, regardless of who's in the council, regardless of who is mayor, is important. Not to mention, I don't want the scenario that we've seen with other departments where you have a different form of policing depending on which ward you're in. It needs to be a comprehensive approach. That approach needs to have aspects of safety beyond policing that I full-heartedly support. But no, I do not think that we should have this reporting structure where, when everybody's in charge, nobody's in charge.
The $2 million that is going into the safety for the George Floyd protesting, that is a lot of the security protections that are around these buildings. Having said that, you're still encouraging folks to come downtown.
Absolutely. And let me give a little bit of a background. By the way, the security around these buildings, this was a comprehensive effort with the county was involved. I mean, obviously it's their courthouse where the trial itself will be taking place. Obviously the city has been involved as well. And so there's a number of different individuals that have been looking into this. And, I'll just be frank. The country saw what happened on January 6th. Where we had these white supremacist insurrectionists literally attack the Capitol and take the place over. And yes, it was temporary, but we can't let that happen. Not to mention, if you have all of our police officers that are guarding a building, whether that's City Hall or a police precinct, that's fewer officers that we can have protecting local businesses from getting burned down by outside agitators that seek to cause chaos in our city. It's just the truth. If we've got a whole perimeter of officers outside City Hall or outside some precinct, it's fewer officers that can be doing their jobs. And so I, like always, I've been very much and been consistent on this for a both end approach to public safety. Yes, that includes all of these alternative mechanisms, whether it's our neighborhood community relations department or Office of Violence Prevention, and we need police. I'll also be very blunt with anybody who's listening here. There will be a very much increased presence of officers, especially as we lead into jury deliberations and the verdict. You won't see a gigantic presence,
Tanks in the streets.
There'll be police. There'll be National Guard.
National Guard will be here.
There will be. Yeah, you will see both present. There will not be a major presence through jury selection and through much of the trial itself. So for the public that's watching, jury selection begins as of right now around March 8th. The trial will begin in late March. It'll last about a month. And we don't expect to see major issues through the trial itself. Now, sometimes towards the end of April or maybe early May, that's when jury deliberation will take place. And then of course a verdict. That will be a very tense time. And as we move towards jury deliberation, yes, you will see a robust presence of law enforcement and National Guard.
So March 8th, jury selection is going to start. It's going to be increased security presence starting March 8th.
A slight increase, not dramatic. You'll see a slight increase at the beginning. The increase will really come towards the end.
Towards the end, and this is this is just Derek Chauvin, and there's going to be the other 3 officers that are coming right after. So this is the one officer who actually had the knee on the back of Brother Floyd, and the other 3 officers are coming right after. So it's going to be one trial after another.
That's right.
Will be another jury selection as well. Can we talk a little bit about the comeback in Minneapolis? How we're going to build back better? I think that might be a Biden phrase. But what is the plan down Lake Street? Once we get out of these trials, what's the plan to build this thing back up as big as it was a year ago?
Well, better is the key word there. This can't just be a return to normal. I believe that we need to be doing things differently. That's not just with policing, that's with regard to economic inclusion and affordable housing. Every day I wake up in the morning and I tell myself, this is another opportunity to be better and to do things differently than we have before if we're really looking for full-on transformation. And so with respect to, the rebuilding better, I think you got to separate it. There's sort of two aspects here. There's the things that need to happen in the immediacy. There's having a foundational element of safety, making sure that people feel safe along these corridors, whether that's Lake or Broadway or Hennepin, you name it. Secondly, there's making sure that the infrastructure itself is coming back. And so that's things like facade improvements. That's making sure that the windows are set properly. That's making, a new paint job if is necessary. Some of these buildings were entirely destroyed. And so getting the rubble cleared out as well is going to be critical. And we've invested city money in all of these aspects to really expedite the process. And then there's also this piece that needs to happen to ensure that we're doing things differently. And that's making sure that we have ownership, real estate ownership, property ownership is one of the best ways to build intergenerational wealth. And what we've seen along so many of these corridors is you've got a business, whether the business is selling ribs or tacos or furniture, you've got a business that is successful, that makes that neighborhood successful, that makes East Lake, for instance, a location where people want to go. And then when people want to go there, the values get jacked up, the rents then go through the roof, and the same people that made these neighborhoods awesome to begin with get the boot. What we need to be doing, and this is a good opportunity to make it happen, is allow for property ownership, not just business ownership, but the BIPOC business owners. We need to get them to own that underlying real estate so they are actually benefiting from the gains in value and this Minneapolis comeback that we know we're going to see. And so we've set up this commercial property development fund.
BIPOC, what's that?
Black and Indigenous people of color, Mike. Come on.
I know. I went.
Come on, Mike.
Sven's Facebook might not know what BIPOC means, but
and anytime you ask anybody about an acronym, by the way, it's like one of the scariest moments for a politician because you're like, oh,
I put you on the spot.
Come on.
Yeah.
So what we want to make sure is that they can own, and we've set up this commercial property development fund that literally will provide gap financing and patient capital so that these BIPOC business owners are actually able to own.
Right. You've got a tight schedule, and I've got to get back to work here. But the $1 million question, Mr. Mayor, as we think about building back, will there be Pride this year? Pretty please with sugar on top.
Oh gosh, I want Pride this year badly. I'm an optimist. And so don't hold me to this, but let's just go with yes, because I want Pride so badly.
What is the plan for that? Are there talks of, how do we decide we can have these things or not this summer?
Because I'm getting my shot. I'm getting my shot.
I'm getting mine too next week because I'm teaching.
Get your shots, everyone.
Yes, thank you for teaching, and yes, for sure. Get vaccinated, absolutely. I mean, I feel like we're getting to the point where there's some light at the end of the tunnel here. Can I give you an exact date? I can't. I listen to the experts. We listen to the epidemiologists. We make decisions based on that data that's coming in, which, by the way, is getting better. For the most part, it's either leveled or at times it is getting better. So you know what? We're on the way. Because I want to get back to that. I'm remembering Pride's past. I mean, Mike, do you remember Bargade? Where we were trying to raise money for marriage equality, and we're like, it was, you tip the bartender, you tip the jug. It was these big orange jugs. And Sven, I know you were doing a ton of work through that as well. And Pride is such a celebration. It's a celebration in every sense of the word, and it's also about all the work that we have left to do. And so I hope we can party again.
Pride's my favorite time of year. I think the city needs it. I want to make sure we're safe, but I'm praying for it.
That's right.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Mayor.
guys. Thank you, Sven. Thank you, Mike. Great seeing you both. Hope
Yeah.
you're well.
Mike, that was an awesome conversation. We learned a lot, both of us, I'm sure. And you know a lot of the policy more than I do. But, you know, the big thing, the whole arbitration issue, which really tells me that the city can only do so much. We need the state to step up too. Our legislature needs to actually change some laws to hold people accountable.
I absolutely enjoyed the conversation. I've been having a lot of conversations with the mayor about policing in the city. My anxiety right now is that the thought, even the possibility that this officer could be found not guilty brings chills to me as a Black man in Minneapolis. But not only that anxiety, even the pressure of these white supremacists can come in, want to destroy our community again. So it was good to hear the mayor talk about his partnership with community groups and what we're going to do to work together to keep Minneapolis safe. Because what I am going to do, Sven, and I promise you this, I will still be out there protesting.
Yeah, and the mayor made that clear. He wants people to come protest, but he wants it done peacefully, and they're not going to tolerate any of that violence or, you know, whether it comes from outside agitators or not. You know, it's going to be safe for everybody in the community. And he made the point too that, you know, like, we got to keep downtown open. Our restaurants, businesses have already been suffering during COVID. So it's important to keep those safe.
Also, I feel like my holy cow moment, Sven, was when he mentioned the amount of Minneapolis police officers who lived outside of Minneapolis.
92%.
92% of police officers live outside of Minneapolis. That should have everyone just like have a pause about what we're doing to recruit, what we're doing to invest in new leaders. And I would say the over aggressiveness of this police department needs to also be fixed. But the 92% is extremely high.
That was staggering. I knew it was high, but not to be that high where it's single digit percentage that lives in the city. And luckily he said he'd come back on and talk more to us. And the plan is to have multiple guests from all walks of life and government going forward in the future. And we really want people to comment, tell us what you want to hear about, discuss what you want us to ask the mayor for next time. You never know, maybe we'll get even a higher government official on at some point.
Leave a comment, make a suggestion. We're going to keep having these conversations. I know Mayor Frey said he was going to come back. I have more questions for him. The Build Back Minneapolis, like, what are we doing about Lake Street? Mm-hmm. What are we doing about gentrification? How are we going to make sure that we're investing in Black businesses? What are we doing to make sure that the education system is fixed, that there's a history of redlining in Minneapolis that we need to address? He said he will come back, so we're going to hold him to that. I want him to come back, Sven, when he can make an announcement if we're going to have Pride in 2021.
That was the other thing that, you know, he really wants to have Pride, but obviously we can only do it
safely. The best way that we're going to make it through these difficult months is for us to have conversations.
Keep having the conversations. Share this, like, comment, again, tell us what you want to hear more about, and pass this on to your friends and family.